Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight to the Artist Talk with all of the weavers that are part of the Artist in Residency project sponsored by Craft in America. And so we're so happy to feature Shaadoot'laa Iyall, who will come up in a moment, but she's working with these amazing, accomplished master weavers themselves ever since February for this project, but a lot longer together before that. My name's Laura Vermeulen. I'm the director of the House of Welcome Cultural Arts Center, and I am a citizen of Central Council of Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska. And so to get the evening started off right, I'd like to invite Davina Baril up.
Ganeshish, Lutelibov Chatlata, Coast Salish prayer song. Please stand if you're able. Abalek T. Zigzag to all Afghanistan Yafti Assiniboine Sioux, Dakota Nation. Asquiditsi cha tweltis la hell. Asquiditsi cha dweltis lija. Asquiditsi cha dweltis lija. Asquiditsi cha Dwelti Buckstab, Quabitis Hatsha, Quabiti Silquamcha, Quabiti Solicha, Hoyapcha, Astacho, Chathalas Ko Belovcha. Altis lijat shat, komakista. We are thankful for this life. We are thankful for our lives. We are thankful for all living things. Fix our minds, fix our bodies, fix our souls. Make them one, and we will be well in this life. May it be well. May it be well. You may sit down.
Atling Ganesh, my opposites Wishkitan. Yak good evening, Shaadoot'laa Iyall Yechnahati Tlachnahadi. My name is Shaadoot'laa. My husband David Iyall is with me tonight. That's where I get my last name, Iyall. I am so blessed to be a part of this residency. I've been involved with Evergreen State College as an artist for about 30 years. They really shaped and developed me as I learned what it meant to be an artist, what it meant to showcase your art, how you talk about the material, your tribe, meeting community and sharing within community. So I thank Evergreen and I thank Laura for being like that sister, that big sister who really walked with me for 30 years. It's also about the time when I started doing some Ravenstail. So a lot goes into play with Evergreen. And this was my first residency. It was phenomenal, and we still have more to go. It brought the community that I've always wanted as a weaver. Majority of the time we do weave solo, sometimes over Zoom. But in person, and to sit and have a meal, it has been a big growth for me. And it really has strengthened my ability to carry forward. In whatever capacity that means, it's always unfolding. So I started being an artist probably in 7th grade. I was challenged by an art teacher who was very upset with the 7th graders. Well, if you really want to be an artist, you have to draw this. And he crumpled up his lunch bag and he threw it in the middle of the table. Well, I wanted to be an artist. So I drew that crumpled bag, even with the numbers and the shadows, and every break I got, I would go and draw that. And a couple of weeks later, he had it hanging up in the classroom. So I was like, I'm an artist. So it wasn't going to be, what are you going to be when you grow up? It was like, I'm an artist. So just encouraging our young ones that everyone is an artist, and art has so much to do with our society and our people, bringing in language arts, working side by side with generational art and with family. So you being here, you're a part of that generational. So Ganesh for being here. So I'm talking about Ravenstail and Chilkat. And I love incorporating math and science whenever I can. But I really want to bring you to the time 30 years ago. I was much younger, and my little babies were sharing a stroller. And my mom had said, I think you should take this class with a lady named Cheryl Samuels. And I later learned she wanted to take the class. She just wanted me to take it and then tell her and show her. And when I say a class, it was this, the 30 warp count. And after the class, she had many things for me to do. Well, we have to make leggings, we have to make headbands, we have to make sways. She really wanted long sways. And I wasn't quite sure the material or what the warp was or the weft. I didn't know much about designing. But she said, yeah, you do. You took this class. And she would stand behind me and she would tell me what to do. She was an artist. She could crochet and knit and bead and make anyone's hair beautiful. She was quite the artist, but she was also the community's counselor when she was cutting hair. So I listened to her really carefully, and I would wake up and she would have something dressed on my loom. So she was really excited for me to continue weaving. And she would buy yarn and she'd be like, well, if this one didn't work, let's go to Weaving Works, if anyone knows about Weaving Works. And so it was a lot of trial and error from this to what I'll show you. But this is a 30 warp count. It's a concentric box. Everything in this little 30 warp count could get you a full-size robe. And I always tell that to anyone who's starting weaving, if you can do this. And it is one of the hardest weavings to do. It's so micro. So this is the box of daylight. And then in the middle is treasure. And you could see these beautiful sways as it dances. So this is, these are designs you'll see on basketry. This is called a tattoo design, also favored by calling it Haida tattoo. Isn't that cute? So these are two little beginning projects. Does anyone want to guess what this is for? It's for an iPhone. And then here's the tattoo as well. And this is a 60 warp count, so you go from the 30 to 60. So ethnomathematics, just from starting from the 30, you bump out to 60. We have the 3-strand twining, the 2-strand twining, 2-color, and spiral. This is a compact 2-color, and it's the lightning pattern. Isn't that striking? So beautiful. And then here's a smaller version, and ethnomathematics, you extend it, and you get this beautiful elongated pattern. So we're talking about patterns and ethnomathematics, and I wanted to bring in this little cute mountain goat. Traditionally, the warp and weft was spun with the mountain goat. This was harvested in Mount Juneau, and this is when he was sleeping and laying down. So you can see a lot of bark, moss, big bark, so much fun, and I'll pass that around in case anyone wants to look at it. There's some different material in here that I'll later talk about. So it's really hard to go up in the mountains to get the mountain goat. We're working on that, right, honey? So today we use merino wool, this beautiful, and this I've prepped this to start thigh spinning. So the warp that you see is spun on the thigh. And this is what you get. So this is the body of the weaving. Some of the colors we use is this beautiful green. And this is the copper bath dye. It matches your pants. So the copper will sit for a few weeks to months, and you will submerge your dye in there, let it dry, and then rinse and wash it. This one is wolf moss, and we used our grandson's urine. And that is boiled. So after you take out all the little bits and pieces, and this is the yellow you get. Beautiful. I'm going to move the mic down here. Getting a little bit more into the designs and what does it mean to weave with ethnomathematics. So you saw this beautiful 60 warp count. It got bigger, and it has more warp, and it has more design field. And you can do skip stitch, or you can add lightning to it. There's so much that you can do within your weaving. This design is called All of Our Ancestors. My daughter's like, are those baby leggings? I hope those are baby leggings. And they're cuffs, but now I think they're going to need to be baby leggings. And my loom broke here, but you can see the repeating of the pattern and how you bring in the second color. You weave with white, and you do a loop entrance, and then you're weaving with the in this case, it's burgundy and white together. So when you do the loop entrance, you have 2 rows that you get to weave with at the same time. And then once you weave all the way across, do you see the zigzags? And then kind of like the bookends of the pattern with the loop fringe and then colored fringe. You take all of our ancestors and you could stretch out the design. And here, not only is it stretched out in the middle, but it also has a white-ended, and the middle is a white-ended and a black-ended. So this is long enough for a headband. The top has a spider web and the bottom. And if you folded this, it would be a shadow image of the design. So here you see the box of daylight that has been extended, and now you see all of our ancestors, and that spiral, even the spiral on the side, grew. And so not only is it's not just going over 2 pairs, but just going over 2, 4, 6, 8 on each side. This is for leggings. So one more side. Now we added 3 longways and then doubled. And then all the ancestors got extended, and then so did the spiral weft. And this is a waist robe for dancing. The bottom will have all of our ancestors as well. And the savage pattern will go all the way around. Stay tuned. 2 more weeks. Okay, 4. This particular design, you notice that a lot of our colors are usually black, yellow, and white. And then the burgundy is a contemporary color, but this is definitely a contemporary color. And this is to honor Huckleberry Camp. And she's got really sparkly crystals. She has ermines, and an abalone, and salmon skin. And she's so pretty. So that's a headband, and here's a dance bag honoring Huckleberry Camp, and it too has salmon skin. Does anyone remember the name of this one? Is it Box of Daylight or is it Tattoo? Yay. And then this is elongated all of our ancestors. And this is lightning pattern. So talking about mountain goat and how hard it is to get mountain goat, there's a lot of things that we have been using today that are contemporary materials, but you'll still see the same outcome. Mountain goat and merino are really, really close. We're really lucky that we can get merino. There's one material that is really hard to get, and that's sea otter. And sea otter was a very significant part of our culture. Living in Alaska, we'd see sea otter everywhere. We have wonderful stories about sea otter and the behavior of sea otter, how they take care of each other and how they survive storms and how they take care of their babies. So we learned a lot with the sea otter living side by side. But it's something that we can't just go and replace. There's nothing that could replace sea otter. And so for a very long time, there's something that we weren't weaving with, and that's sea otter. And when we work with our yellow cedar, red cedar, salmon skin, we're very thankful, and we use as much as we can when we're hunting, and I always call it sustainable arts. I was really lucky to live in Alaska, back home in Juneau, and I was working with the art department. So I got to meet all the hunters, and I got to go up and down Southeast Alaska and teach skin sewing. It was a wonderful time. Got stuck in some storms once in a while. It was really hard. But I really had an appreciation, and there's a historical robe in, at the time, USSR. It was collected in 1790-ish. And I always wanted to weave with the sea otter. And so that was starting my journey. And I want to thank Joe, if you're watching, Ganesh Chish. Tiffany, if you're watching, Ganesh Chish. Friends and family got together for me to be able to work with sea otter. And as you can see, that there's sea otter warp on the large robe. Just cutting it took the longest time. It was actually last summer. It was my whole summer. We had sea otter everywhere. But I did want to pass this around so those can feel the sea otter, and then our little sea otter friend. Before I started on this robe, I really needed to do the warp count. I needed to figure out how long, how wide, how much sea otter I needed versus the wool. And then I also needed to figure out the design pattern. So I did a little swatch, a little sample of what that would look like. So I'll pass that around too. So we just started about Ravenstail, a little bit of Ravenstail. And I do want to do a shout out to Darlene. Hi, Darlene, we love you. We love you. We started this weaving 6 months ago. We've been getting together every Saturday to see so many robes being woven is very, it's a big blessing. It's something that we haven't had in a long time in community, to be able to sit down and start full-size robes. Darlene gave us the loving name of the elderberries. So we're going with the elderberries. We're not quite elders yet. We're the elderberries. And I do want to acknowledge our Tsimshian weavers. Could you please stand, please? And stand here. It's really important for us to acknowledge some of the historical relationships with our arts. And both of the sisters, I feel so, I'm like, how lucky am I? I'm a sister right here. Janice and Jackie are Tsimshian. And this is the origin and the creation and the stories and the legends of Chilkat weaving. And that isn't said enough in our communities. You might read about it. And the more we acknowledge that, the more that there's healing coming to why we're doing what we're doing today. Not so much of how did it happen or who does this, but what we're doing today. And I really wanted to acknowledge them and lift them up and really give thanks to the work and the artwork of their ancestors and their family and their dedication today and bringing us in. So as a Chilkat weaver, they're bringing me in. They are supporting and teaching and helping. So I really wanted to take a minute for this.
Which section?
And how about the other elderberries that we have? Can you come up, please? So we have Davina and Sarah. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to share what we've been doing. As you see, we have some full-size robes that they'll share and talk about. And then we'll close it with talking about our Chilkat weaving that Jackie and I have been doing over Zoom. And without this residency and without this grant, we wouldn't have been able to weave in person twice. Chilkat weaving twice. So we'll think about that when we show you. It's just amazing that we've been able to come together. So, thank you. So about the sea otter robe, She was gathered at Latuya Bay, and my grandfather, who's Wishkitan, this is the territory where he would go hunting, seal hunting, halibut fishing, and there's a story of being able to sing over the bay, and this is the bay. The colors are brown and yellow, and Susan generously gave me some wolf moss or pine moss, and that's where the yellow comes from. But you see how it goes from a 30 warp count to a 600 plus warp count. And that's where we really want to encourage our new weavers to easily grow with the ethnomathematics. Okay, so now that we did the Chilkat, does anyone want to start talking about their robe first? We'll close with these two.
We've decided to create a family robe in honor of our Killerwell family. My sister and I are Lakibu, the Wolf Clan, and our father's Killerwell, our grandmother's Killerwell, our auntie who we learned to weave with is also Killerwell. So she passed a few years ago, and in honor of her passing, we wanted to create one of these dance robes for the Killerwell clan in honor of her. And part of this is bringing our Killerwell family into the practice of weaving. So we hold that knowledge and skills, but several of our relatives do not. And so we've started with my aunt's only granddaughter. She is weaving with us on the full-size robe. And what's different about this robe is we're combining Chilkat design, or we're combining Ravenstail design, but using Chilkat technique. And so this is both challenging and very exciting to work together to create this robe. I'm sorry I didn't bring my apron that shows there will be killer whale designs, whale tails that will go across this robe and down. We'll have 36 total. And then we'll have a few other designs, returning salmon on the bottom, as well as shadow of the tree will go down and be our third border. So this is a robe in process, but we're hoping with our sister weavers to finish this for the April celebration.
And I just wanted to add one thing. So in doing this robe with many of our Killerwell cousins and family members, they've never woven before. Our niece, Becca, she finished her grandmother's apron that was unfinished. And Jackie worked with Becca and she finished that. But our goal and our passion is to awaken the indigenous knowledge and skills that everybody holds deep in their DNA. And by doing that, Becca, she's only been weaving for 2 years. She's a natural. Our other cousins and their daughters and some of their sons, they've been weaving on the robe and we've been teaching them the small pouches. Started off with the 30 warp pouch, box within a box. And several of them are naturals. So we've helping them to awaken their natural indigenous skills and knowledge that's deep in their DNA. So it's been very wonderful to see that come to fruition. And they're just excited. They're like, I did it. And they're just excited. So it's been wonderful doing that.
Anyone else like to share? Miss Davina. I think this one is.
Kakundigain, yuhadu asal klingit gainach, wishkitan, tushit Yeah, my maternal side is Wishkiton. I am Shark through my mom, and from the Shark house, also through my mom. You're born into a house. With that being said, my husband, Achkaniyan, my opposites, Achkaniyan, the Dukdin Tans, the Lukhnakadis, at one time, way back when, they were together. So Shaa is also my Kaniyan. She's my in-law, and that's what Kaniyan means. In Tlingit society, there's your ravens and your eagles. So we give back to our opposites. They lift us up. We lift them up. There's that balance, that reciprocity. And I talk about that because when I am thinking about what to work on, it's really not about me, it's about what I can give back, what I can give to my opposites. I've woven headbands and I've given away headbands. One is, I started on the returning salmon. I'm like, who, I ended up giving it to Bina McLeod because, and I work with the Puyallup tribe. I go to school there, or I teach school. But as I was weaving it, I thought, she does so much for our community. I need to give this to her. And she was very grateful. And when this is our elderberries that we have been talking about in our weaving group. Our elder is Miss Darlene Peters and Deborah O'Gara. They're our elders. And we're just the berries. But anyway, this is a lightning design, and I thank Sarah for designing or putting the design together in such a way that makes it easy to weave. So when I was making this, Tiny was looking at it, my husband was looking at it, and he said, "Oh, I see the design now." And so he was so excited to see it finished. He goes, he would say, "Are you finished now?" I'm like, "Almost." "Are you finished now?" I'm like, "Okay, I'm finished." But that's just with the weaving. There's so much to this. I mean, if you look at Shaa's headdress over there, there's the, some people use bias tape. She used salmon skin. There's the fur on the top, which is ermine. She has ermine tails, and she has, is that rabbit on the top or ermine? Ermine, yeah. It's beautiful. Beautiful. So I did a little swatch because I initially was going to do this other robe, so I wanted to see the colors. And so I did this as a little test pattern, and I will still do this other robe, but for now I need to study it a little more and do a little research and travel to Copenhagen and really look at the back to see where all the instructions are, right? And then this one is it stayed on the loom for a while, but I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a diamond die stitch pattern here. And then up here, this was done by Mary Bona. And when she lived up in Alaska, and she's Deshi Tan, she was asking me when she came down, "Davina, I haven't woven in so long. Would you help me weave this? I don't know why I'm stuck." And it turned out she had liver cancer, and she passed on. But this came to me, this, the warp she had warped on here, and some of these socks, you know, at one time when we did our weavings, these were gut bags from seal to protect and keep dry, to keep clean the warp. So I'm really thankful that this came my way, because it is part of that giving to community. And so I left her weaving up here, and this part that I put in there, but today I learned how to do this like unique pattern called the rigid weft. And I tell you, I've been studying this for so long. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And when you're like you're doing it by yourself and you're looking at it, somebody can tell you across Zoom, but to be shown how to do it is so much easier. So I don't know if you can tell, but this is how you change the color. There's a technique for changing the color, and it shows up as dots to where you change that color. Well, when you're doing a rigid weft, you are carrying across the wefts that enable you to continue the border. So you start the color on this side, and then you're carrying that color in the back, and you bring it over to the other side. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Shaa showed me today, and I'm just like in heaven, just like hyperventilating practically. I'm like, can't help it. So this is a robe that is inspired by the remnants that were found in the 1990s, and it was in Sitka, Alaska, and it's over on Kiksadi land, and I want to create this for the Kiksadis, for taking care of the land through all this overt colonialism that is present, but in such a good way. I feel very blessed to have this time to spend in community with the weavers, because it's very magical and it's very healing. So, Ganesh Chish for listening. Ganesh Chish.
We have Kagan. Do you want to have him?
Perfect. It was too short for her, but it's perfect for me. I'm going to move it over here so you can see the robe I've been working on. The white one behind me. I'm going to try to introduce myself in Tlingit, and I'm going to mess up, so bear with me. Kagan yukat duasak, chak nakat siti, wushkitan ayahat. I had the great honor of being adopted into the Tlingit community by Davina Baril. And I often get questions as a non-Indigenous weaver, is there space for you in this practice? And so I wanted to let any non-Indigenous weavers or artists know who are watching that if you learn this work and come to it with respect, your pieces will be welcomed into the community. This robe I'm making for the local Tlingit Haida and Tsimshian community so that it can be borrowed by dance groups. And so if you're willing and able to learn these skills, put them to use, making regalia that can be used by people who have been dancing with it for centuries. There's nothing like watching someone wear something you wove when they're up on stage. It feels like being a fashion designer. It's very cool. Before I tell you about this robe, I just want to thank a couple people without whom it would not be possible to even have gotten this far. I started learning Ravenstail weaving from Lily Hope online during the pandemic. So Wishkinde Lily Hope, thank you. And then I spent a year studying with Shaa online through the University of Alaska Southeast. And that was what really kicked my skills up a notch and made me feel confident to be able to do this. And then, of course, being able to weave in community with all of you has been incredible. This robe is an interesting one. It's the neighbor of the robe that Shaa is working on. They were both taken from Lituya Bay, Alaska in 1788 by a Russian explorer and brought to St. Petersburg, where they have resided in a museum ever since. And as far as we know, textile researcher Cheryl Samuel is the only person who's been able to go there and touch them and measure them. And so we're both working off of her measurements and photographs from the museum. This one behind me is the most intact example of that style of robe, without the sea otter, just made out of pure mountain goat wool. And I'm very lucky that the museum has put together a really high definition photograph so that I'm able to zoom in and see every stitch. So I'm trying my best to replicate every measurement and every stitch so that people who will never be able to travel to Russia, and of course, Russia's not going to give it back anytime soon, this might be the only way that we can see physically what it looked like, what size it was, all the different idiosyncrasies and asymmetries in it. So it's been really fascinating to be able to learn from doing this process. We're all hoping to be done with these big robes by April, and I just want to give a shout out. Lily Hope is organizing a symposium that will take place up in Juneau. It'll be April 15th through the 17th, and you can learn more and sign up for information at her new website, which is the Northwest Coast Textile Center. So it's nwctextilecenter.org. You can sign up for a mailing list and be able to get more information and register when the time comes. So if you want to learn more about Ravenstail or Chilkat weaving or even Coast Salish weaving, that's the place to be in April. Thanks.
Kagan has done so much when it comes to dressing our dancers. And that's what the regalia, the weaving is all about, is to wear in ceremony and song and dance, when someone's getting a name, when there's potlatches. There's so many reasons why we need to continue weaving and dressing our dancers. And Kochia looks really good because of Kagan's work. And I do want to say, Ashlinganishish, our granddaughter, wears the most beautiful baby Ravenstail robe, and Kayla is in the process of making little mukluks to match it. And it's like this foresty color green, and Kayla saw it. Kayla saw it, and she came to the loom. She's raising her babies, and when Marcy got wrapped, and she was actually with Seattle Indian Health Board, they were doing promotions of breastfeeding, and you'll see the baby robe on Kayla while she's nursing. So there's so much that has happened with that robe, and it brought our Kayla to the loom. So Achlinganishish, and that's what sisterhood does, right? That's awesome. Okay, so we talked about the math, the science, and the weaving of Ravenstail. And we lifted up our Tsimshian sisters, and we're so blessed to be with them. I do want to talk about bringing in yellow cedar. This is from Deborah. Thank you, Deborah. She brought us some Alaska yellow cedar. This is what it looks like when we get it ready to start boiling. And this has been cured. And then when we start boiling it, this is what it looks like. And then we have to break it down to this. And this is just getting ready to thigh spin. So I'll pass that around. So when we're spinning, we have two sides of the wool, and we either do one side with the boiled yellow cedar are double-sided. And this is what it looks like when you're thigh spinning and you add it up. So those inches turn into yards. Yeah. I told my honey and I'll be like, how many yards do you think I spun today? And we'll like track it down to see who's closest. I did that today, honey. So I was like, how many yards do you think this is? And Jackie helped me count and trim it. So this is 50 yards. And you need 1,000 to do a full-size robe. And this took about 3 days. And that's taking care of the cedar and spinning. Why would we need yellow cedar in our weaving? To make form-line designs. And that's what Chilkat brings on. And would you like to come up and we could talk about our pieces? So Jackie and I have known each other for a really long time. How long have we known each other? 30 plus?
It's been a long time.
And the road just brought us together in our path. Chilkat Weaving did that. And I said, would you like to do a waist robe with me via Zoom? Because I want to be able to use language. And I'm like, how do you explain bringing a braid to one to the other? And Jackie's like, I'm on it. How much warp?
Started spinning.
And she started spinning. So we have been getting together Wednesdays and Fridays before early in the morning. Honey, the only time I wake up early in the morning, my alarm says Chilkat time. I like to sleep at 10. But we get up and we have our tea and we have our smoothies and we're sitting together working on these 2 robes in separate homes about 60 miles away from each
about
other.
60 away.
And all of this we've done via Zoom. And we've been doing really well. I was like, Jackie, what would you call this? How do we describe some of the things we're doing? And one of our we always say we should put this on a sticker, funny things. One of it is weaving blindly.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, when we're weaving together, there's a lot of braids that happen, and there's just a very small space in the top of the robe where one morning we counted, we were handling 84 braids at one time. And so as we're weaving, you don't see the design under the braids until you've completed it. And so weaving blindly is really something that I think took a lot of time, but we hung in there and we finished it. And then I was telling Shaa this morning, this is the first time, the second full time we've wove these robes in person today, but we have been really consistent with meeting online, and we've been talking about how can we try to perfect this so we can help other urban or other weavers that are remote to really lean into using technology, especially online weaving, to help them learn this beautiful art form. But for me, what's so wonderful is we actually are in tandem. We weave row by row, warp by warp. We're counting together. We're stopping. If one of us makes a mistake, we wait for the other to finish before we continue. And it's just such an interesting cadence. It's very, to me, it's very meaningful to have somebody doing this art form that's remote, but when we're online, it feels like we're side by side. And when we introduced our robes a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, it was the first time they were together, and I think we're doing a wonderful job at keeping everything symmetrical. And what I love too is we usually start on the left side, and
that's our side where we learn and we struggle a little, and then the right side is so much easier. So we always think, okay, we'll start in the left side with our new form, and then the right side ends up being really much easier. But we're trying to document and think about how do we teach this way in the future, and how can we utilize what we're learning online. And of course, Shaa teaches also in Southeast Alaska University online, so she does use camera in a way that I don't have a camera on mine, but what we do is use our iPhones. So we're constantly like sending pictures, or we'll do FaceTime just to kind of try to get through something that might be a little challenging. But it's just been an amazing experience, and we hope to continue to learn so that we could pass this technique on to others and use technology as a way to make sure other weavers have access as well.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's been great.
And these colors, last summer, we went to Kagans and we did dyeing. It was so fun because it was on a fire pit, and we had rocks, and we had all this amazing time to do some dyeing of the wolf moss,
Yeah.
and then the copper. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness, cheese.
Deutsche.
So it looks like we're ready for questions. If anyone has any questions for myself or the elderberries, or I do want to say, I love the elderberries. I love you all so much. I do want to say, if you are interested in doing some weaving, please look on my YouTube channel. I have the 30, 60, 100 warp count. Some headbands and cuffs are coming online. And I was really inspired with the career development. I was a recipient of the career development. And that's when I spend my time of like, how do I do recordings, and what do I need to start out with, and how do I make this grow? So my husband and I are working on further development of equipment so I can continue doing that journey. So some of the funds, it's like funds go from here to here. Like, how much yarn can I buy? That camera, do we need that camera? No. So any questions? Yes.
And the reason why I have the computer is for the online questions. So before we go on, Darlene is here, and she said, yay. She says, very proud to be part of all of you every day.
Yay. We love you, Darlene. Who had a question? You had a question.
I'll be back.
So, regarding science and ethnomathematics, see, I think that's in our DNA. And tonight's example, of course, is your territory. How does it translate into our children's performance in math and science in public school? I'd like to think we're geniuses in those two disciplines in public school, but I know that not to be true. So I'm just wondering how we could further the language of science and ethnomathematics so that our kids truly can use the system within public school. So right now I suspect it's not a cultural match. So it's a language that stands alone, whereas we live with it daily. Our kids are always using odd and even, and they have to know that in order to help grandmas and grandpas sort. So the kid will know that instinctively, but so in your experience, what's your sense of science and ethnomathematics in our children's performance in public schools?
Goodness, geesh. There's so much beautiful curriculum that I've bumped into and have really studied a lot of. And when I was in the library at UAS, I found a Ravenstail curriculum by Shkin George, and she is a teacher. Sorry, she's retired now, but she used the math and the science of Ravenstail, and that's when I was really inspired. Before then, I worked for Suquamish as their cultural specialist, and then I moved to the museum as their language coordinator. And I've worked in different titles, but always with the art and having art as healing. An example is how do we involve our children in curriculum of living arts and science. And the cedar tree, there's so much that can happen with the red and yellow cedar tree and how we use the different elements that they provide for us, and also the season of harvesting in different parts of the cedar tree. And then once we do harvest, what we're making out of it. So that process shows a lot of the science. And once we start boiling the yellow cedar, how long do we boil it versus spring, versus summer, versus leftovers from a weaver? So there's so much that could be written down and keep track of. And then after you boil it and you split it, how does it behave with wool? What's happening? And having the children describe that, and they will come up with analogy that we wouldn't even imagine. I would be like, oh, it's like the tension and the energy, and that's why they wrap together. And they're like, no, it's because the mountain goat rolls in the dirt and they're spinning around. So it's just beautiful to hear their point of view, and they start telling stories. Or if they don't know if it's the difference between the temperature, then we bring out different thermometers and we talk about weather change and we talk about seasons. So that's just one fun example, but it would be wonderful to bring in more curriculum and send that with our kits and with our teachings.
When the making of the frames is a whole other aspect. Mm-hmm. So see, we can't do one without the other. Mm-hmm. So that science and the knowledge and knowing the wood, yes, the grain, and all of that. The spirituality, the connection to the tree. So I think we also need that mind of the educator to put this in motion.
Yeah, well, I agree. Just an example of what they call wolf moss. That's something we wouldn't normally want to call it, because what it does to wolves isn't something we would want to bring into community and talk about, because that's such a negative aspect. So how do we put it in our language? And then we talk about like I like to call it the pine moss. And it's such a slow growing, beautiful plant, and it's so vibrant and so colorful. But what has it gone, how many seasons has it gone through? How long does it take to grow? And the responsibility of finding it on the forest rather than taking it off the tree. So there's so much that we can talk about just on going in the woods, and that's so important to go and harvest the material that we need for our art. There's so much that happens when you're working together in community. And our educators, I agree as well. Mm-hmm. And it's cheese.
Other questions?
On the white robe, the brown hanging down, will that continually hang down, or is there a way to end it so it's not, I mean, it's beautiful the way it is. I would prefer it hanging down.
Yes.
Sure. Hi, this is Sarah, in case you can't see me. Those are the tails that flare out when someone is dancing, and I'm planning to cut them to match the measurements that we have from the robe in Russia. So they'll end up being, what is it, about a foot or so? So they just haven't been trimmed yet. Yeah. But when it's done, every one of those boxes, there'll be, I think, 6 rows of 6. Every one of those will have a tail hanging off. So, yeah.
So we have about 9 more months of weaving, and they're going to go all the way down. And we do hope to figure out how to share that of where we are and how long it took us and how many. By then we'll be making soups and stews, right?
In the 30s, 40s, Alaska kids were sent to Chemawa at Salem, Oregon. So some of those people intermarried with tribes in this area. And I do know that some of the grandkids have reached out and joined some of the dance groups that are here. And I am just curious in terms of how we could help Alaska Native descendants. Clearly, they're totally involved and embraced and enrolled in tribes down here. But it's such an important connection in terms of making sure that the knowledge survives within this area. So I'm just curious about your awareness of the Alaska Natives who have intermarried and live with tribes in this area.
Goodness, geesh. I'm one who intermarried with my honey, who's Nisqually. And Washington State has one of the largest populations of Tlinkets. There's about 9,000 of us down here. The Tlingit and Haida tribe just opened an office in Linwood, so there's some connections. They have classes. I'll be teaching Chilkat weaving the month of August. They also do genealogy, language, a lot of time to come out and vote. They bring salmon, herring eggs, distributions through Tacoma and Seattle, and some even farther. But just within Washington, there's a lot of new activities happening, but there's Alaska Kotia dancers. They're always welcome to come and learn how to make moccasins for dancing and singing and bringing all of the family. I do know it could be, we saw some of the Tlingit students come and visit us this week, and it's been really nice. And the first thing Davina's like, "Who's your family? Where are you from?" And they're like, "We went to Celebration," and they answer exactly how you get to meet another tribal member, because the first thing is like, "Are you Raven? Are you Eagle? What village are you from?" So we as a community with Alaska Kotia dancers, we're always trying to be available. Sometimes it could be really hard living in urban at large. Some of the services that you don't have in Alaska, that you have in Alaska, we don't have down here. So one of the reasons why we want to continue weaving is bringing our family members, our tribal members into this community where we can teach song and dance, and Davina's amazing in language, but also the arts of weaving. So.
And then just to add to that, I'm Janice Simshan Lakibu. We have, my partner in crime, Heather Puri, and I have gotten many grants. And our passion was to extend and teach as many Simshan relatives how to weave Chilkat, since it originated with our people. So that was our first grant, and we had 10 weavers. And then we said, why are we gonna stop here? And so we did Ravenstail. And so we keep getting grants and teaching as many of our Alaskan relatives that are interested and that will come and learn how to weave. Plus, we're also involved in NYO for the Native youth. Through Heather's company, Scene, we are dedicated to get the Native youth involved in Indigenous sports that were actually survival techniques and hunting techniques. So we've been involved with that for the last 3 years. And this past year, these kids have only been doing this, trained for 3 years. They went up to Juneau, competed, and 3 of them medaled in their competitions. And they didn't grow up with this. They only learned it within the last 3 years. So we're dedicated to keep that going, especially in the diaspora, the Puget Sound region, because there are so many Indigenous relatives. So the passion is there, and we keep going, and We have information online, and scene.org is the one group where we're doing weaving and also the NYO Sports with the Youth. And we're lucky to get a grant through the Seattle Parks Department, or the City of Seattle, and it's called Arts in the Park. And so once a month we've been in the park telling Tsimshian stories, teaching either weaving cedar hearts or Chilkat tassel poles. So people have shown up, and we've got a good response. So August is our last session. But yeah, it's been amazing.
We have time, believe it or not, for one more question.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, this is from online, from Amy. Hi, can you please say more about how the sea otter was prepared for weaving?
Ooh, hi, Amy. We got a hold of, hi, Jeremiah James of Yakutat. He's the hunter. He does beautiful work with sea otter and seal. To hunt seal, you need to be tribally enrolled, and there's a tribal blood quantum that affiliates with those who can hunt. And there's so much stories I got to tell you about sea otter. Sea otter are amazing. They're so smart and they're just so beautiful. And I do want to say the relationship that we've had with sea otter goes back, and we're talking about the 1700s of these robes. We're talking about like 1400 when we use sea otter for all of our clothing, deer and moose. There's so many things that we use for our clothing. Sorry, there was no North Face. So it was sea otter, and we used not only the ones that we hunted, and back in those days we didn't need to have certain permits to be able to hunt them. We hunt them reasonably and sustainably. And when sea otters did pass and they were floating or they came to the beach, we did use those. So it wasn't just a hunting practice, but it was a harvesting practice of whichever way we did get sea otter. But today it is a little bit more difficult. They have been under trying to find the right words without it being so like negative, but under Fish and Wildlife, there's so many things that we have to follow on protocol of how many you can hunt at a certain area, which is very respectful, and we agree on that sustainability, but you also have to have tags. So that's also with hunting other things as well. But the hunter has to take out a back of a tooth and send in, and it's registered within the hunter and where in the location. So we are lucky enough to get the sea otter from Jeremiah James of Yakutat, and last summer was when they came to our home. And to work with sea otter, you'll have to have the certain amount of blood quantum, and you have to manipulate it in so many ways before it can go out. So you have to process and work with it. The tan hide, the tanning of the hide is different than what it was back in the day, and so you can see the strips of the sea otter of my weaving, and the back of the skin is different. So I always think, like, what did they do? How did they do that? Because you look at the one at the museum and you don't see the sea otter strip. But last summer I did start, and before I did, there's some practices that I do that I had learned from my uncle David Hanlon, who was our hunter and provider growing up. And before I even started working with the sea otter, I cleansed it. I gave it its last water. So you symbolically bring water to the sea otter. And I got an eagle feather, that was from Yakutat, and I did cleanse it. And I think the sea otter and every part that I used for it will go to family and friends. I did cut them from the top to the bottom, and the siater wasn't long enough, and so I sewed. So you'll see some still need to be sewn because I was impatient. There was about 200 hours of cutting the siater, and everyone was like, "Hey, we're wrapping up our loom. Are you going to start?" So I have a couple more to do some sewing on. And as you're weaving, it takes me almost 4 times longer to go across with the siater than without it. And what I have to do is every time I come upon a siater, I have to brush it down and I have to hold it. Then I take my weaver and I do my twining. So that process does take a little bit longer, which I think it needs to take that long. It really does. This isn't a fast art. I'm working with material that is historically precious. And that was our last question. Can the elderberries come up as we say goodbye to everyone? And Darlene.
Then you also have Samantha and Sheila.
Yay! Samantha and Sheila also came and wove with us. So. Thank you for supporting us all, and thank you for having beautiful meals set aside and bringing some space. Having space was really hard for us to be able to come together and weave. So through Evergreen and the grant, Ashling Ganesh Chish.
And